Hello everyone, I am here at Asmodee North America with the CEO, Christian Petersen, founder of FFG. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us.
You're welcome. So what is this? Is this the fourth year in a row?
I think it's four.
It's a 4 year in a row. Yeah. No, I'll look forward to it now.
Yeah,
it's
so
a tradition.
I enjoy, getting to sit down and ask the tough questions, and you always have incredible answers. So I'm excited today because there's a lot of big stuff happening here at ANA/FFG.
Big pressure.
So first thing, you guys, a year and a half-ish ago, I don't know the exact timeline, you're the founder of FFG, and so FFG merged with Asmodee.
Mm-hmm.
And then Asmodee in North America was formed, which you are now the CEO of.
Right.
So how has that changed things for FFG since then?
So FFG, if you've been here on our campus, you'll realize that FFG used to be kind of intermingled in this building.
Sure.
We actually have two buildings. You can't see it in the camera, obviously. Maybe you'll do one of those slideshows
we can cut to some shots
and B-roll and put them all
yeah.
in there and
all
stuff. Right. But we have two buildings, and so what we did, Asmodee North America we're a games company, a game distributor, marketer, and financier, which aim to bring great games to people all over the world.
Sure.
We represent a lot of different types of games, styles of games, and studios, and so obviously we had a responsibility to make sure that the kind of work that we did here would represent all these different entities that's related to the Asmodee Group and some of the valuable partnerships that we have. So part of what made the merger a really positive thing is it allowed FFG to actually focus more on what is always done well. You know, in the past when we were growing FFG, we were going, well, what's the next leg? You know, what if this thing ceases to become popular? What if people gravitate away from Lovecraft? Or, well, you know, what happens? How are we going to keep adding prosperity to our company and moving our people forward? That was always a struggle for us. We would always look at, well, you want to get into party games, you want to get into, family games, you want to get into accessories. Where do you want to go? What's the next leg? And I think that was important to us when we were independent, but it was also a distraction, and it was, generally speaking, while there's been some successes here and there, generally speaking, not something that really the core brand and audience wanted out of us. You know, sure. They didn't want games about penguins or colored cubes, or they wanted games with highly thematic narrative games that are very, very considered and layered, and obviously try to express themselves more in a lifestyle experience and game than just your casual play. So with the merger, that allowed FFG to not have to worry about its future position in actually in a diversified environment.
And just focus on what it does.
Just focus exactly what it does. So we're allowed to take a lot of stuff that it used to do, and people that were involved in that, now they can concentrate on making the FFG style games that's able to do. Yeah. So that's changed a lot for FFG in a very positive way. We did, as I said, we used to be all part in the same building here. We actually moved them right across the parking lot over there, so they're now over there and have their own, pretty large studio, cool. And where they're able to actually, hopefully, it's laid out in a way where they can really focus and do the best work possible.
And so, like, have
you guys have a chance to visit over
we
there?
have had a chance to check it out. So on a practical level, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also get to take away a lot of the business activities, right? So potentially like accounting and distribution and warehousing. That all of a sudden FFG as a studio can just be FFG the studio. Right.
I mean, it's exactly like you're right. I mean, FFG before was really the whole package, right? We were marketing, accounting, warehousing, sales, administration,
the whole business,
IT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so many different things you have to do to make things turn around. I think we're able to, of course, we still have that. So really, what Asmodee North America is more or less the old business functions that used to be part of FFG, but was kind of split off and now services a much larger goal.
All the design studios.
Whereas all the studios from part of Asmodee, all the studios that we distribute, we're part of a global community, and we try to express ourselves in a global way, and we try to grow games globally to many different audiences, right?
Sure.
So, and one of those audiences is this huge, significant audience that FFG had and still has, and is growing today. And I think we do a better job of making games for that audience than we ever have. That there's some incredible stuff in the hopper.
Sure. Well,
some great stuff for
some
sure
incredible
here.
stuff about to come out.
Yeah, exactly. We have a pretty big couple of months ahead of us.
Even more coming down the pipeline.
Yep.
So, as far as your role in all of this, you went from running Fantasy Flight Games, being the CEO there.
Yep.
Now you're CEO of the global, or I guess the North American Asmodee.
Yes, the giant
section.
Pac-Man of the industry, right?
Yeah.
Yes, no.
So what are you up to now? What does your role look like in a practical sense?
Well, so I think there may be a few things that would make sense to talk about vis-a-vis what happened prior to our engagement with Asmodee, and that is that FFG really was a fairly substantial organization. I think by the time we were maybe 100 and 130 people. Yeah. A very substantial part of my time, really, in the end, even then, was absorbed with more of the administrative, operative, financial, and just planning matters related to just running the company. So my role in moving over to the Asmodee stuff has maybe not been as traumatic for FFG as some might have feared. There are very great people that continually work on FFG and had worked and had been trained for a decade or so prior to that moment.
Sure.
And people like Corey Kanishka, Anna Navarro, Michael Hurley, et cetera. A lot of the really key people that have been running FFG for many years prior to our merger are still running FFG and are still moving it forward day by day. Yeah. So I mean, my absence, however much I wanted it to be super missed and then super critical, has really not been all that critical. I mean, I still really enjoy interacting with that staff and really exploring, especially the release schedule planning and then the vision for what we're doing. But in terms of the expression and the day-to-day experience that you have with the games, and when you're discovering layers of actions and discovering layers of strategy that goes into it, those are the great designers and great producers over there that are making that happen, not me.
Yeah.
So I was always, whether I liked it or not, I was always pushed more towards that business operations side of things to make the gears,
the wheels turn.
The wheels turn, the gears turn in the machine. So that's what I'm doing over here now on a larger scale. We have a lot more responsibility.
Way more brands,
but it's been a great, it's been a great new experience. Get to meet a lot of new great people from around the world, and it's a new series of challenges for us.
Sure. Well, and I think one of the things I've always really respected about the way you've done things and FFG has done things is you're not afraid to swing for the fences, and you're not afraid to take chances or risks. And right. I mentioned that in light of where I'm going with my next question, which is earlier this year, I think it's the first true sign of Christian Petersen style leadership that I saw come through ANA, which was the new sales terms.
I see.
You guys announced those, and just in your own words, what is that? And I think more importantly for me, why is that important in your opinion for the industry? Because I think it's a critical move.
Yeah, no, it's a very important move. So certainly controversial. It has its fans and its critics, and I totally understand that. Just to describe what actually happened is that early last year. We issued a series of policies for how the Asmodee North America products, that includes FFG and a number of other studios, would be sold in a marketplace. This really relates to a very, very long experience in the industry going back 20 plus years and seeing the industry evolve. And essentially over the last 10 years, the way that the industry has fractured itself into different ways that people acquire product and interface with product and get to learn about product really deviated, particularly in the last 5 years or so. And we saw that similarly in an industry such as the sports cards industry, where we had a lot of fans, a lot of collectors, a lot of people who were engaged on a local level. And what ended up happening is that the industry got commoditized via catalog buying, online buying, and it destroyed the fundamentals of the industry. People were buying by the case, they were getting the discounts they could, but they were buying it from services that were not actually providing a lot of the other values necessary for the health and establishment of the growth of its medium, such as sports cards.
Sure.
So that kind of burned itself out in a short period of time, 3 or 4 years, and it's now just a pale shell of itself.
Yeah.
And this is a nightmare scenario for games, because games need local engagement, they need personal engagement, and they need to be sold and expressed in many different ways: online, retail, mass, conventions, etc. There's a many different ways that games come to you. And what we discovered was that we were basically having, our different channels for how games were being provided to the market were basically destroying each other, and nobody was actually coming ahead, and we're slowly getting to the point where we would be undermining our ability to grow and nurture an industry that we really want to see around for the next 50 years.
Sure.
So ultimately, it's pretty very simple. That what we have is that we produce and make games, and we want them to get to end users. We want end users to explore them and have fun with them, sure, and tell stories and have wonderful experiences with them and find value in them. In order for us to get them from point A to point B, we use a number of services that people provide, such as distributors and retailers. And they're really providing us with a service of getting that product from point A to that end user. Okay, and there's many different ways that we partner up together. Certain of the people that buy the product, they provide a lot of different services in the way they do it. They provide, they provide gaming space, they provide on-hand product, they provide tournament organization, they help us market the product, and then they facilitate an availability and they facilitate a transaction. And so we have certain, like our hobby specialty market retailers, provide a lot of different of these kind of smorgasbord of different services. We want to pay for those services. We want to make sure that all those are provided and make sense for a retailer to provide. Then on the other hand, you have certain of our venues, such as the online space, which are very important. It's a very important part of the market. It's very important to us. But they did provide almost only a fraction of those services.
Sure.
So we found ourselves having to basically pay for those services to both parties, but one party was not providing them. And so in order to, in all fairness, in order for us to make sure that people would invest in the right areas in the marketplace, we simply said, listen, we're going to define the market into two different kinds of segments, and we're going to treat them basically differently because one provides us more services and the other one does not.
Sure, for the long-term health.
For the long-term health, because we need gamers to be created every day. I saw a survey of I've seen many different kind of numbers of this over the years, but Wizards of the Coast, for example, who does the Magic card game, that they put out some data that says that they basically lose their players after 4 years. So I'm sure somebody stays around for 2 decades.
Sure.
I'm sure stays around for like 6 months, but on average about 3 or 4 years. Okay, so that means that about 25%, say 25% of your player base is gone every year. You have to replenish that player base in order to just stay even as a company, and stay even just for the player community to have players and engagement and a sense of being part of an exciting place in the gaming market. We have to always be considered that how do we generate new players entering our hobby to engage in our games and so on and so forth, because we lose them to football, to getting married, to go to college. I mean, there's many different ways where people drift out of our hobby, and we have to constantly pay attention to how do we replenish that.
Sure.
And there are different ways we do marketing, we do conventions, we try to do demos, and of course we also have about 3,000, in the US only, about 3,000 what we call authorized specialty Asmodee retailers.
Sure.
Okay, and these are one of our critical partners to help get games into the marketplace, get them demoed, have organized play happen, have games available on the shelf for people to see and be able to feel and touch. That's a very important part of our market. We want to make sure that was not eliminated because we think that could have had an extremely deleterious effect on our ability to just prosper as an industry, generally speaking. So we had to put some policies into place, which are not unusual, by the way. I mean, most industries have them. If you're in sports goods or any other kind of industry, most serious industries will have various sales policies. So we didn't do anything that was particularly unusual in the grand scheme of things, but of course in our little hobby, they were kind of unusual. We certainly taken a lot of bullets for that, and we certainly understand what some people are concerned.
Sure.
But that's the general philosophy behind it. We've seen several other people in our industry now also follow suit with their own, little unilateral policies and try to actually preserve the market. And we see this as a healthy thing. It is an important thing. It can be hard to understand, but it is something that we're truly doing to make sure that the products that we play and we want to generate and the new games we want to invest in are going to be around for several decades to come.
Sure. And
keep the market growing.
Well, that's a great answer.
All right, well, thanks.
So other A&A potential, I guess, big happenings. You guys announced earlier this year you were acquiring F2Z.
Yeah.
I think they're a Canadian company that kind of was similar, I think, but on a smaller scale to Asmodee, where they have the studios that they own and so on. So what was behind that? And I mean, do we expect to keep seeing that throughout time, more and more?
I mean, what happens when Pac-Man has no more white dots?
Yeah, I mean, what happens then? Do
I go to another level? Or, where do we go?
Where do we go?
Yeah, no, it's obviously the Asmodee Group very much believes in our industry and the type of products that we do. We believe we're going to grow. We believe we can make even greater and better products in the future. So we will from time to time invest in companies that make sense, that bring a lot to the table. And try to bring them into our group and try to see if we can become greater than the sum of our parts.
Sure.
I think this would be one of those situations. So F2Z in particular was a great company founded by a lady named Sophie Gravel, and she's grown that company really over the years. She herself acquired a few organizations such as such as the Z-Man organization from Zev Schlesinger back in, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then last year did the Plaid Hat Group, which is
acquisition,
just a wonderful group of people down in Dallas.
I agree.
Making super cool games.
Yeah.
And so they also had a third part, which was they have a distribution company in Canada. They call F2Z. And so there were really three parts to the F2Z business that were very interesting to us. There was the Plaid Hat. There was a Z-Man business. Z-Man, most famous probably for Pandemic. They also do wonderful games like Carcassonne, a number of others. There was Plaid Hat, which is a young studio that I feel has done incredible work. They kind of remind me of a small FFG or younger FFG a while back. And then you had this great opportunity for a distribution company in Canada. And Asmodee, generally speaking, over the world is really a distributor. And so if you go to France and England, Scandinavia, Poland, Italy, whatever, they are, the main business is distribution, finance, and warehousing and marketing of games.
Sure.
Only really with the Days of Wonder acquisition and with the Fantasy Flight acquisition was it publisher related and more consumer front facing.
Yeah.
And so with this acquisition, of course, there were three things. There were two great studios, which I think could be a great part of the Asmodee family, and who hopefully we can invest in and to really help grow and to make sure that they can make even greater product in the future.
Sure.
And then there is the distribution facility. So Canada's distribution has always been something that's a little bit of a puzzle for Asmodee, because in part Asmodee is a French company and been servicing the French marketplace, and in part we want to service the English marketplace in Canada. So what the value of F2Z really was in 3 bits, and each of them have a different story.
Sure.
Distribution company has been renamed Asmodee Canada, and that will be an Asmodee distribution arm that will service the Canadian market on a wholesale basis. So there won't be any consumer-facing activities from there, but they will start over the next 12 months or so, start servicing the Canadian marketplace, both with French and English Asmodee products.
All the Asmodee.
Yeah, so that's Asmodee Canada. Then of course we have the 2 studios, and those we kind of patriated down here to A&A. And there's really 2 different stories there. First, Plaid Hat is very simple. Plaid Hat there's 6, actually, I think, fantastic game designers in Dallas, led by Kobe Dosh, who is the founder of Plaid Hat, who's still around, still making great stuff. They're going to be independent. They're going to remain in Dallas, and of course, A&A will help them and finance their products and activities, and hopefully get that business to a whole other level by making sure we invest in their ability to grow and design games. The other one is Z-Man. Z-Man was a little more complicated because Sophie Corvell, in selling F2Z, has actually started a new company called Plan B, and she'll sell games underneath the Pretzel Game brand. Yeah. And so a few of the games went with her, and a few of the staff from the old F2Z development crew went with her as well. And so what happened is down here we had a newly formed studio called Wind Rider Games, which is led by a great guy named Steve Kimball, who used to be a producer here at FFG. And he was kind of spun off on his own to start his own company, Wind Rider. And with the F2Z opportunity, we decided that there was a perfect idea here to actually merge the activities and product portfolios of Wind Rider and Z-Man into one studio. Cool. And so the studio that will survive in name is Z-Man, which is the more famous, long-living studio. And but Steve Kimball, who was the head of studio at Wind Rider, will actually be the new head of studio at Z-Man. Very cool. And so the crew that was behind Wind Rider, there'll be a few new people added, and there's a few people that still will work from Canada, who are really much into the old Z-Man catalog, and will continue to work on games like Pandemic and Carcassonne. Very cool. From Canada. Yeah. So that's the stories. So after these stories, really was 3 different unique stories.
Well, I feel like essentially the Asmodee, what you're doing even with FFG, from what I've seen, is you're stripping away all of the things that aren't ultimately designing great games from these companies, and making that part fluid and easy and better and stronger, and letting them really triple down on making great games.
Yeah, all the studios that we have in a part of the group, whether it's FFG or Z-Man/Wind Rider, Catan, or Plaid Hat, whatever, their primary function only is to make great products and have great R&D. All of those things that can be distracting and confusing, such as finance, marketing,
even just distribution,
distribution, warehousing, logistics, all that stuff. Yeah, that's right. All that stuff we have extracted from those and are focusing on in the A&A business side. and then those studios hopefully will feel like they have the independence and the resources to make the games they always wanted to make.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
All right, well, let's switch gears for a second. One of the recurring themes when we've interviewed you in the past has been where basically tabletop and technology cross streams.
Yeah.
Right? And this is a very interesting topic, and since the first couple of times we've talked about that, FFG, in particular, I know has released a couple titles that have started building that bridge, right? You have XCOM, you have Mansions of Madness, and soon, I think, Imperial Assault from the in-flight that you gave. So what's the reception been so far to that style of integration from?
Great. I mean, we love it. I mean, in fact, one of the things that we now are trying to hold people back from a bit is to always try to find a digital solution to board game problems, right? I mean, it has a really material and impactful and excellent, beautiful new resource you can add to your physical games. But it's not a solution. It's not. You can't be lazy in using it, right?
Yeah.
And it just opens up so many opportunities and doors to make complex gameplay and storytelling easier for the end user, because there's so many things behind the scenes you can use in a small computer that lies right there and shows you a screen like a card or a piece of a manual or whatever.
Or sounds.
Or sounds, etc. Exactly. So we're still and remain super excited and deeply committed to actually exploring in that field. And you see, we first came out with the XCOM game, which is a very light touch involved in the experience. Then we hopefully surprise the world with our Descent Road to Legend application, which really takes Descent, which was in the old style Descent, was a one versus many player, where you have one player play the Overlord, the other player plays the adventurers, and you go through the series of fun campaigns and dungeon crawl kind of a exploration, and you end up having a narrative adventure. This sort of takes away the concept of having one player having to play the Overlord and play the bad guys, and turns all that business over to the app itself, which drives this interesting, exciting experience. You also get the point of exploration now, where you basically like, look, let's see what's down this hole. Let's open up this chest, and you can just click that same chest on the computer, and it'll show you what's in there. So the element of the ability to do exploration and discovery and complex storytelling is so much more varied and so much more interesting than what we can do, in a game that only uses cards. You can do everything with cards if you really want, but the amount of fiddliness and the amount of what you have to remember, which cards are shown and not shown, and which decks to use and not use, can be so overwhelming, and that we felt we're reaching kind of some limits about where can we take physical game experiences. So offloading, a part of that fiddliness onto a device gives us a whole new way of interfacing with the physical game.
Sure.
So we also came out with, of course, Mansions of Madness, which I think takes a whole other level yet. That if you actually play Road to Legend, which is a Descent software augmentation, and you play Mansions, I think you'll see there's a huge step up in terms of the immersivity of story, the immersivity of what can happen, the different paths you can go. So I mean, if you actually play the same adventure or story, I think they're called, in Mansions of Madness twice, you'll hopefully discover that they actually have different endings. They could have different paths. A whole different little mini stories could appear.
Sure.
And that, of course, is something that would be very difficult to do in an actual physical component, like using cards or booklets or something would be very hard to do.
Sure.
So anyway, to summarize, we are really excited about the software augmentation of games. FFG probably has the leap on it among all of our studios, and I think, well, I wish I could tell you about some of the things that we have yet to do. But we're definitely exploring that rabbit hole even deeper.
Steve's shaking his head off camera. So, well, I was going to ask if you, given that, you kind of answered my next question, which is, do you think that where technology and tabletop cross is the future of tabletop? And I think it's at least part of the future.
I think we have to be careful. I think there's a point where it can be overdone. So I had a presentation a few years ago. Maybe I explained this already in another interview with you, but. Where I put together this bell curve, and I said here this bell curve represents the relative funness level of augmenting a product with software, and if you go on the horizontal level, it is how much software you're making the game have, and what's your funness level, kind of your level of impact on the game
experience,
on on the x-axis. So in my mind, if you put just a little bit of software augmentation in there, you don't have a lot of impact, because you're kind of in danger of it being a gimmick, where you're putting something in that isn't really necessary, it's not adding much to the experience, it's not really doing much for you. On the other hand, if you go from the other end, if you go put way too much in there, you're going to ask yourself, why am I not just playing a computer game?
Sure.
Why am I not just getting rid of these silly cards and just fully immersing myself instead of a screen experience? So, in theory, there's a place in between those two, kind of a magic zone, where there's just the right amount of augmentation that you do that actually makes your experience excellent and much better. So I think we're gonna enter an exploratory time where I think a lot of people, based maybe on what we've been doing, maybe based on their own ideas, are going to start implementing some of these phones and tablets that we all have in our pockets now into our table. And I think we're going to see people that will probably, I mean, you can even argue that maybe we have, depending on where your opinions are. They're going to aim too low. I think probably the danger now that we've sort of shown that it can be done at a much more integrated level, the danger now is maybe going too high.
Sure.
Because in the end, we still want to have a physical product experience. We want to have a experience with our friends sitting around a table that is not replaceable by a computer game experience. If a computer game experience was a complete substitute for the physical game experience, the physical game experience would have disappeared already.
Sure.
Okay, so it's obviously not.
Yeah.
So there's something that adds to us as humans in a form of entertainment, a form of get-togetherness that those softwares do not. So I do think that they can be used to really enhance the experience, but it can also be used to either just be irritating and not really relevant, or to be so consuming to the experience that it becomes deleterious to the actual thing that makes a real physical game fun.
Sure.
And exciting. So I think we're going to see a lot of things in that direction. So the question is, how much more impact and fun can we get in that middle zone?
Yeah, where is that?
And that's fun to explore. It's fun to think about. It's fun to try to express it in different ways. Maybe there isn't a color that's even more bright in that area, but maybe there's many different colors to explore. Like we provided you with one experience in XCOM that really provides you more kind of a complex timer and kind of a lot of information flying at you you're dealing with. Whereas in the Descent and Mansions, you're sort of it becoming more or less like a game master for you. Like there could be other ways that these things could be expressed in games that are different than those, maybe not necessarily even more in-depth, even more...
Not necessarily more technological, just applied differently.
Yeah, I mean, so that's my feeling on it, all the way from the beginning, is that there's something that's too much, something that's too little, but I believe, and always believe, that there's a relevance in the middle. I mean, some people will say that any electronics in your game is so silly, it should never happen. I'm not in that camp. I believe it makes games better. I don't believe all games should have it.
Sure.
And I mean, we have to be careful about also getting lazy and where we think that, oh, let's not, design this, we'll just have an app do it, and all suddenly we are starting to remove the foundations of what makes hobby games and physical games fun.
Sure.
So.
Well, that's important.
All right.
I think that's really important.
It is, yeah.
So, and someone doesn't have to, but someone's going to push those boundaries, right, and find out where they're at and where the levels are. I
hope they do.
And so, interestingly enough, you have this technology and these boundaries being pushed, and at the same time, FFG recently announced a couple of titles in some very tried and true, traditional, old school style models of tabletop. Right?
Completely appless.
Completely appless.
It's amazing how this is possible.
FFG announced Star Wars Destiny, which is a collectible game.
Yep.
Also Rune Wars, which is a miniatures game.
Correct.
And so these are two entries into categories that FFG hasn't either been in or haven't been in a while.
Right.
So first off, why collectible, right? Why revisit this old model? For years, Fantasy Flight Games has been the LCG company staking their flag on that non-collectible, play the game, not the chase style of thing. So I'd be really curious to know your thoughts behind why revisiting that model is relevant in 2016.
Fair enough. A few notes is that FFG always from the very, very beginning, probably based on just my kind of omnivorous appetite for playing different game styles, and always growing up and playing, I've been involved in many of these.
All the things.
All like from TCGs to miniatures, role-playing, board games, all of these areas, and I have enjoyed and appreciated and I understand the excitement, that kind of kernel of energy that comes from the players when they just sit down and start playing.
Yeah.
So part of the FFG strategy was always, hey, we want to have a relevant, exciting, innovative game in all we consider the relevant categories of the gaming market. We also think that there could have been a whole new category invented that we call the living card game, which was more of almost like a subscription-based, heavy expansion-based model that would approximate some gameplay experience that you also have in a collectible form.
Sure.
And these aren't mutually exclusive. Just because a miniatures game happens does not mean that a board game should go away, or vice versa, or that living card games, which we hugely believe in, and we're doubling down on. And we've just announced that we announced, I guess, last year that we're putting out the Legend of the Five Rings game in an LCG format because we believe that's the right format for it. It doesn't believe that there isn't a lot of fun and a lot of people who really enjoy and appreciate the collectibles format. We just never felt we had the right concept in there. There was a time way back in the last decade, especially, where that field was extremely overpopulated.
100%.
And there wasn't really the ability to have. We didn't feel we had the game or the license or the ability to make a game big enough for that player network to grow and be relevant enough, so people who want to get into a collectible game, they can go out and find opponents.
Sure.
So when we were talking to Lucasfilm, a while back, we've always had the rights for the collectible category, which we then express via our living card game. We always thought about how can we express a game in that category that actually would be unique and novel and not just kind of a Me Too property. Because there's been, for Star Wars, I mean, there's been 4 or 5 collectible card games already.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily an undiscovered space there. So we were always wondering for a long time, what can we do in that space? There's been some innovations out there. WizKids puts out their Dice Masters game, been a couple other interesting properties, and we thought about that for a while. Generally speaking, I didn't really want to go that direction because I didn't think that the gameplay expresses itself well with a very, very low resolution dice. So it wasn't until I saw, when I was visiting Germany, one of our partners had put together a small superhero dice game that had these amazing fully colored printed dice.
Yeah.
And before we were dealing with anything printed on a die, you'd usually be dealing with either some sort of a screen printing, which rubs off and is not really all that great because the registration goes off. Sure. Or you would be dealing with stickers. People would put stickers on. Stickers have their own problems in that they rub off and that they get smeared and they get dirty. So here was an innovation, I think, in production technology that actually had this die, which had this special process of actually printing right on the die and be able to code it in such a way where it's incredible. I mean, have you felt the dice yourself?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, just try to scrape those images off. I mean, they're fantastic. They're full color. They're high resolution. And the dice looked amazing. I'm like, that's it. We can build a game around that concept.
Interesting.
And there's something about dice, if done in an innovative new way, that there's a lot of excitement that can be generated from that because they're little cards in themselves with random effects.
Yeah.
And so we looked at that saying we can build a game around this. This is really something special.
Interesting.
So we had to completely scale up the production of the facility that actually does these dice. We looked at a couple different facilities, but they weren't ready. They would do maybe a couple of tens of thousands of these dice, or maybe a couple of 100,000s, but not in the millions of scale that was required for us to really put out a game at the price we wanted and to the extent of reaching the global market scale, the global market that FFG does. So we had to go through a lot of R&D. Our production team went over the beyond the Call of Duty to help
make that happen.
So that was really incredible. So if you haven't seen these dice and felt these dice, I really recommend doing it. I think these are going to add something new to gaming, just as we think digital does. The ability to have full-colored, high-resolution dice printed, despite the expense that they have, there's something new to that. There's something exciting about that. And so I think it was a confluence of the idea of the material being new and different and exciting, something physical and tangible that you've never seen before, and also then working with the design team that come together to put together a deceivingly simple but deep and interesting game with so much back and forth interaction that we had something really special, which we call Star Wars Destiny.
Yeah.
And that's where it's actually a very good question, because we're just about to launch this in a few weeks. On Friday, we're going to have this incredible event, preview event right here at our own game center. I think we couldn't have been prouder of any game we put out. And we believe it fits beautifully alongside all the other categories that we service games in. It's not going to be for everybody because it's collectible and blind purchase, but some people really appreciate that category. It's a very low entry point to actually test a game like that out, and it has a lot of fun elements to it: the blind purchase, the trading, the discovery. That of course we can't get in a living card game format.
Sure.
But once again, there are two different styles of approach to play, and we support both.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have a valid game in that category prior to what we think is now. But to be fair, now collectible games are not new to us. We've done a number of collectible games in the past, and in fact some of those living card games that we play
started off collectible.
Yeah. So we're pretty aware of that category, what it did, what its ups and flaws and its benefits were. So if you're asking me, are we doing this amazing game, Star Wars Destiny, which is a collectible game with its own benefits and disadvantages? Are we doing it on the expense of the LCD category? Absolutely not. And we have a bigger team working on LCDs that we do these collectible games. But we believe the collectible games are fun. There's a lot of people who love them, and we want to have a solid, really innovative and great product in that category too.
Sure, why not?
Why not?
So speaking of other categories, miniatures games.
Yeah.
Room Wars.
Yep.
Why miniatures? I mean, I don't have. Had you guys done miniatures before in the past? I mean, Imperial
Well,
Assault.
we have a game with these little starships that we do.
Okay, so let me back up for a second. Yeah, you do X-Wing, right? X-Wing and Armada and Imperial Assault.
Right.
And I think those are very, so on my scale, right, like if you're looking at the different major categories of tabletop, collectible, non-collectible card games, RPGs, miniatures, they're all miniature games, but there's, if I'm breaking down the miniatures category, you have, I think X-Wing style game is its own category, a pre-painted, skirmish style game. Imperial Assault is a different category, right, where you have this, it's like Descent and Imperial Assault with a story mode and models. There's models there, but it's also, it's subcategory. Armada, even a different category, right, which is a little bigger, somewhere in between maybe an X-Wing and what I think Room Wars ultimately is, which is, full scale armies, miniatures, longer form, bigger tables, terrain, that style of game. So. It is fair to mention X-Wing in those other games as miniature games, because they definitely are. But it's an entry into, I guess, a subcategory of that I haven't seen Fantasy Flight do. So what was the thinking behind that, and what's going on with Room Wars?
Well, I think a couple different core concepts. Like I said before, we really want to try to have a great game. It doesn't have to be the biggest game or the most successful game. We just want to have a great game that we can support. With a hopefully a great audience, in every major category, and we weren't in that miniatures category. It hadn't been for a while. We did do X-Wing, and one thing that the FFG team and generally Asmodee is all about is that we are game forward, game first, and having myself play miniatures for a long time, I felt that the category itself had become miniature forward, miniature first, so basically sculpt first. Mm-hmm. And that so much remains, and there's probably a great audience for that. So I'm not saying that I'm not trying to dismiss it, but a lot of miniatures games became about the model, about the paint, and not about the innovation and the way the approach to the game. We've always been game first. So with all the investments that we had in X-Wing over the years, and all of the whole new software team and miniatures team was built up with our own 3D rapid prototyping machines and so on. We kind of felt that we were starting to get very, very good at the actual sculpting business. And probably not the best in the world, probably far from it, but we think we have really beautiful, amazing models that we could do. And that was kind of becoming a core competency of ours. What if we married that with another one that we think is a core competency, which is to create game forward gameplay that really was innovative and different, and somehow brought a new approach to that format of game, such as miniatures. And if you actually look at some of the fundamentals of Rune Wars, which you're describing, it's kind of a mix between a new style of thinking about games, such as brought in X-Wing and a whole bunch of new kind of ideas we've been bringing to it, and more of your visual optical style of old school miniatures moving around in blocks or whatever, moving around into some sort of using rulers or whatever on a table. I mean, miniatures games look great. They're fun.
Sure.
I love them. And so we had the ability to make these great models. We also had the ability, I think the risk mentality and the hopefully freshness of vision to come in and create something that was really a kind of a brand new approach to how the core concept of miniatures games could work.
Sure.
And so I don't. Yeah, you guys did a video on Unruined Wars, the Gen Con.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, there's a lot of really cool concepts in there, and how you're choosing hidden orders, you know, and how we interlock units together, how units are built, the speed of the game, and how fun and exciting and kind of fast-paced that it is.
Yeah.
So we're just very excited to see how we could bring some real innovation to that area. I hope you agree with us that it's fun and it'll bring something new.
Sure.
Now, in terms of pre-painting, it's just not the act of pre-painting any miniature is hugely expensive. It's by far, you know, the actual cost of a model to bring into the level of pre-paint job that you see, for example, in X-Wing, about 60 to 70% of the cost of products in the pre-painting, the painting of the actual miniature. There are no machines out there that is automate painting yet that I've seen. You know, it's a painstaking process. You'll be amazed when you see how many tools there are. There are probably 60 or 70 tools on a table where the different pieces are locked in and they're basically sprayed or painted to make sure that the paint is applied in just the right way, in the way we want it.
That's crazy.
So it's a huge laborious process. It's very, very hard to get looking something that looks great and it looks to the standard of like a hobby gamer. And I have yet to see it done in a way that's satisfactory to done in a way where actual pre-painting of actual miniatures, of organic miniatures, really look great. You can get your action figures, which are usually much larger and cost a lot per single unit, that are painted really well. But in terms of like a mass scale battle game, we have not found the process, and we don't think it exists, where you can actually make an amazing paint job on these things that look great. And have yet be even remotely affordable to anyone.
Sure.
So we decided instead of a lot of people love to paint their own.
I was gonna say it's part of the hobby too, right?
It's part of the hobby to paint their own. So we felt that we weren't going to go the pre-paint approach on this because you would have so few miniatures to play with that it wouldn't express the experience in terms of a relative affordability. Instead, we have great miniatures that are they're in solid colors. That there's a little bit of assembly that you have to do with them, but we think it's done in a way where people are really going to enjoy it. It's going to be fast. And of course, they're free to paint them, or they can play with them unpainted.
Sure.
If they like.
Well,
so,
that's a huge part of the hobby too, right? That's not totally understood. I love painting. Imperial Assault, same way. It's just too many models to pre-paint like that. So, looking ahead, ANA, FFG, Christian Petersen, what are you most excited about for the next 5 or 10 years, and the role that you and the companies that you're involved with are going to play in that?
I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm excited about, of course, the sort of step-by-step building that we're doing here to integrate, this global organization and try to make a truly great, innovative and inspiring, new type of toy company. Because I think games are toys, and I think they're the best toy. And I think there's no great game companies or toy companies in the world whose heart is in the games. Like you have several other ones. You have building blocks and girls' toys, boys' toys, action toys, et cetera, et cetera. But is there anything that really is meaningful in a physical game sense that sort of reaches into the heart and soul of people all over the planet? I don't think there is. I think that's what we're trying to build. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how we can move that forward in the next 10 years. Whether it's in your family games or your party games or your hardcore hobby games that we sprung from. I'm very excited to see where, like you said, we talked about earlier, where that electronic augmentation is going to come in. What's going to happen with augmented reality? Are we going to have, the Microsoft HoloLens goggles on, and is that going to start blending with our physical components? I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And nothing to be scared of. I think it's something to actually embrace and see what kind of awesomeness could happen on your table with that.
It gets pretty crazy, right?
It does. I mean, there's a lot of just exciting things to happen. I think sometimes we can get a little bit ahead of ourselves where we think technology will take us in a short period of time. Personally, having a lot of experience with 3D printing, I think probably there are some people who feel that's much closer than where we are in terms of like consumer products and changes. Where there are others where I probably think we're much closer than you think. It's the self-driving cars or maybe augmented reality on your tabletop. So the integration of technology and the physical world is really fascinating, and I'm curious to see
how that plays.
How we're going to play it, and certainly I would love a company like FFG to be in the leading edge of that, testing it, see what we can do. I think there's a certain defensiveness that comes from certain of our fans when we're trying new things, but I think that's the only way we get to anything new, right? Is to actually try new things, and however that much irritate your sense of what should a board game be or what should a card game be, We're never gonna, hopefully, never start making games that are like what certain of our fan base wants. But we also want to try to break new ground.
Sure, always.
And where that's going to go in the next 10 years, I have no idea. But I'm certainly excited to be as far ahead of there as I can.
Well, I'm very excited to see it. Thanks again for sitting down with me. That said, before we get out of here, is there anything you want to say to everyone watching, to the community at home? Here's your chance before we cut out of here.
All right. Well, once again, guys, thanks for listening to me ramble here for about an hour. I thank you for the patronage that everybody out there. Every time you sit down and play a game, you are bringing people together. You're supporting a whole huge community of retailers, distributors, and publishers. We're all really one big community. We're in it together. And so let's play nice and let's move forward together.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We have plenty more coming, so stay tuned.